Great. So, really nice to meet you, or not meet you, see you again, Gretchen. And I'm actually delighted for you to join us because this will be, well, this is going to be slightly different, this webinar, because we're going to have action. Now, we've never had action before, so that will be a first. So, oh, sorry, that was then my mobile on, giving us BBC News flashes. So, anyway, so today I'm delighted that Gretchen is going to join us. So Gretchen is a physiotherapist who specialises specifically with people with MS conditions. But what I thought was really pertinent to actually our whole audience is because everything that you do is for people who actually have other chronic conditions. I presume that could be arthritis or fibromyalgia or something like this. Is absolutely relevant to everybody, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really so many different people. I started off, because I'm an MS specialist, I started off sharing my tips and exercises and strategies for people who have MS. But very quickly, I found that I was attracting people who had Parkinson's or fibromyalgia or even some of my clients' elderly parents, just because they also needed daily movements and balance exercises and walking exercises. So the exercises and strategies are helpful for MS, but so many other chronic conditions as well.
And I think, interesting enough, when we talk about, funny enough, in our webinars, we always end up talking about movement or gut health. So I'm assuming we're not going to cover gut health, but obviously we're going to talk about movement. And what we learned last week from Dr. Gemma Newman was very much about movement's really important for the lymph nodes to get them working. And I had no idea. And so now I kind of realised that movement isn't just about, being buff or whatever you might want to call it. It's actually so important for the body to be able to function, at a reasonable level.
Absolutely. And I don't know, when you're out of exercise, when you haven't been exercising or moving consistently, you kind of forget some of the benefits. But I exercise pretty frequently. I try to practice what I preach. And recently, there were just a few days where I decided I'm just going to sleep in a little bit. I'm not going to exercise. And on those days that I don't get moving, I actually do feel more tired and more sluggish. And it's our bodies actually have physiological changes when we move and exercise.
Absolutely. So today, we're going to go through the importance of movement, why it's so important for chronic conditions. Look at the types of movement to improve strength, balance and function, and then also examine some of the conditions, the reasons for why we get weaknesses caused by MS or actually caused by anything else. And then I've written there, live demonstration of exercise. So I think what we've agreed is we'll try and do a couple of live demonstrations as we're talking. So maybe if we group together some suggestions, and then you go off and you go off. I don't mean you go off. We can see you doing those exercises, which I think it's really important. So it's all very well talking about an exercise and even seeing a drawing, but actually seeing somebody do an exercise is completely different. It makes you really understand what you're meant to be doing, isn't it? And which is obviously very important.
Yeah, and it makes it feel more real, like, oh, I can do that. Versus, okay, what does that picture mean, or what am I supposed to be doing? So yeah, I think real life demonstration is an important component to have, to make it feel like, oh, I can do that too. This isn't just something that is good for everyone, but I physically can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, because I always forget, any questions that you may have, please start posting them whenever you like, and then we'll be able to answer them towards the end. So starting off then at the beginning, so the importance of it. I know we've just touched about it because I mentioned about lymph nodes, but I'm sure there's far more other good reasons why we should keep moving.
Yeah, so if we could all probably Google benefits of movement or benefits of exercise, and there would probably be a list of about 100 different reasons. When it comes to MS and chronic conditions, there's a whole nother list of reasons. So what happens when we move. And it could literally just be walking. It doesn't have to be jumping jacks or like what we think of as exercise, like running, jumping jacks, lunges. It could just be walking around. But what they say, if you don't use it, you lose it, that is somewhat true. Where if you don't use your muscles or use the neural connection, so from your brain down to the muscles, then it does get slower. It does start not working as well when it already has demyelination from multiple sclerosis. Or if you have another chronic condition, we still need that speed of the neurons and of the pathways, because the stronger those neural connections are from your brain to your muscle, the stronger your muscles will be. So we need both, and that takes repetition, time after time.
Absolutely. So the different types of movement. So and we've listed the sort of strength and balance functions. What, presumably there's ones that you can do where you're just sitting down, ones where you're standing up, and alternate them, as I suppose depending on whether you're having a good day or a bad day.
Absolutely. So we could separate this into a couple of different ways. Number one, positions. There are strengthening exercises, balance exercises, and functional exercises, as well as stretching and a whole bunch that we're not listing, that can be done in a seated position. They can be done standing. They can be done in bed. And there's truly ways to modify or advance any movement or any exercise. So I have a decent amount of clients who will email me some days saying, hey, I'm in bed today. I cannot get out of bed today. I just can't do anything. And if you have a string of those days, so it's many of those days in a row, it is still important to get movement. If it's just one day, rest day is fine. But if it's many and this is becoming more chronic, there are exercises that you can do sitting up in bed or even lying down in bed. So just being aware of that option puts you back in control instead of feeling like, well, guess I can't do much today. You could now feel, I have exercises I can do. I can do something in this position. Or if you're having a great day and maybe you can even go outside or walk around your home, there are exercises you can do standing and in upright movements as well. So position is one thing, but then we get to the subject of different types of exercises, because I like to say there's regular exercise and then there's MS specific exercise. So, and we can demonstrate some of these, but regular exercise might be something like if you go to the gym and maybe you're doing lunges or jumping jacks or running or the squat machine or a pec fly, like the chest machine. Those are good exercises. Or even a very common one is the bike, a seated bike. Those are great and they're good for strengthening. But when you have MS, those types of exercises often don't have the same carryover. So you might have full strength doing an exercise laying on the ground, which one of my favorite physio ones is the straight leg raise or the clamshell. You might have full strength in those muscles on the ground, but you go to stand up and use those muscles and they're non-existent because your brain doesn't have that carryover. So that brings us to functional exercises. Functional exercise means you pick a goal that you have, and for a lot of people it's walking, but it could be standing up, it could be stair climbing, it could be assisting with transfers, but you pick a goal and you break that goal down into many different movements. And I'll demonstrate so we're all extra clear on this because it's really important. For those movements that you break it down to, those are your exercises. So that's the type that's most helpful for people who are working towards goals that have multiple sclerosis. And then there's the different types of balance exercises are different than strengthening exercises. And they're different than walking. Balance is its own category, which I think is important to call out because a lot of people feel like well, I'm practicing walking, that means I'm practicing balance. And that's not true. Or I'm doing my strengthening exercises, that means I'm getting my balance work in too, which often isn't true. So you do have to pick the exercises you do from many different categories: strength, flexibility or stretching, balance. Cardio is another important one. And there's a way to do cardio without fatiguing your legs. So lots of different factors here, just the positions, the type of exercise. And then lastly, I feel like I've been talking for a while, but lastly, it's really important that if you're having a day or a week or a month where you're just not feeling great and you feel like, I can't do my exercises today, or if you are the type of person, which I think most of us are, where it's hard for you to get motivated and to stay consistent, there are just day-to-day things that you can do as exercise. So one of my favorites, and I'll demonstrate this one, is squatting. There's so many, you can squat every time you go to the bathroom. Once you're done, stand up and sit down, do those sit to stands 5 times. Or when you sit down on the couch, stand up and sit down a few more times and then sit down. There's lots of different situations. Yeah, it's tiring. But you're doing it throughout the day. It's not stringed all at once. So maybe you only do 2 each time if 5 is too tiring. So that's one thing. But if you have stairs in your home, you can, go up and down the stairs, even if it's just 2 steps. Doesn't need to be the whole flight. But just doing movements throughout the day can also count as exercise.
And I think one thing that we haven't mentioned with all of these is the feeling, of the empowerment, again, of taking back control. And then once you feel you're taking back control, the mental health side of it, the positivity that comes from it, it's like self-fulfilling, isn't it? So although you feel that you've had a day in bed, but if you've done a couple of exercises, you're not going to be beating yourself up if you hadn't done just a small amount. So it doesn't matter how big, as long as it's just something, then keep sort of continually moving you forward on the, I was going to say on the right path. I don't know if that's the right word to say, but on the path to keep you feeling that you're okay. You're looking after yourself. You're doing the best possible job you can for your body.
Absolutely. And to be honest, I think that the mental, what word do I want to use? The mental side of things is equally as important as the exercise alone, because I can't tell you how many of my clients will say, well, they'll show me what they did. They'll email me or they'll send me their tracker and they'll say, look at all, like I did all these things, but it was only 3 days, but I could have done more. We are so quick to judge what we do as something negative, but we could have done X, Y, and Z. And when you do that, you are actually training your brain that exercise means feeling disappointed or feeling discouraged. Because if every time after you exercise, you're feeling like, it was only 2 exercises, or I only did 5 repetitions, or, I could have done X, Y, and Z, you are neurologically training your brain that exercise means feeling And if you feel about exercise, you're not going to stay consistent. You're not going to feel good. You're not going to be motivated to keep going. So, and this is a conversation I have with a lot of people of when you're done with your exercises, no matter what you did, if you only did one sit to stand, that counts as exercise. Or if you did your full plan, that also counts. No matter what you did, tell yourself immediately afterwards, good job. I am so proud of you. You could have chosen not to do it, but you did it. Stay consistent. You're doing awesome. All of these words of affirmation that will pump you up and make you feel good.
I feel like yes.
Yes, yeah. And at first, it might feel very fake. And I always say it's okay to fake it till you make it. But at least giving yourself that positive reinforcement, you're more likely to be optimistic about it, to stick to it consistently, and be more motivated, which ultimately is the big goal.
Yeah, well, I think, when we had our conversation yesterday about stuff, it's that, well, in fact, should we do some exercises and then come back to the motivational side, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a chair back here. I'm sitting in a swivel chair that has wheels. I would always say never use that chair. You want to make sure you're using a stable chair. So I'm just going to move out of the way. You might get to see my dog if he makes the shot. No,
Oh, he's gone. He's run away quickly. Oh, there he is.
Okay. Oh, I turned it down a little too much. Okay, I think you should be able to see from there. Okay, so I just want to demonstrate, and I'll show you from the front as well as the side, but one of the things that we can do just throughout the day, so whether you get to your actual set of exercises or not, this is still something that you can do. And this is what I was referencing earlier when I was saying, if you're going to the bathroom, when you're done, stand up and sit down a few times. Or if when you're sitting on the couch, if it's a commercial break, or you're pressing to watch the next episode of whatever it is that you're binge watching, take a break and stand up a few times. So if you're already sitting, actually, I'm going to show you from the side first. So if you're already sitting, and we do have a separate video on this demonstrating the exact specifics, but you want to be sitting up tall at the edge of your chair, knees come back, shoulders forward, and sit up. You can use your thighs or armrests, and then sit down. And then up and down. And for some of you guys watching might think like, well, she's making it look easy. It's not that easy. There's other strategies that you can use. You can have your arms forward to help you keep your balance forward and stand up and down. Or if you have a difficult time fully standing, I'd rather you just do this. It's still I feel this in my legs, I feel this in my core. And even if you can't lift your butt up at all, just reaching, that uses a lot of muscles. So you can do either a sit to stand, or a sit and hold, or a reach every time, multiple times, every time you go to the bathroom, every time you are pressing to watch the next show or you see a commercial pop up. Anytime that you are already sitting, you just have to remember to do it. And from the front, I'll show you.
And I suppose one of the things that is really important, and I'm probably stating the obvious, is it's important to have a chair that you use that makes you feel stable, that you could do an exercise like that. And it's not one of those chairs that once you've gotten it, oh my God, I'm never going to get up again.
Right. That's a good point to make, because this one, the reason I like this chair, it's squishy, so it's comfortable, but it's also firm. Whereas like my chair with wheels on it is a typical office chair that you sink into a little bit. If it's too challenging, if it's too low of a surface, which for a lot of people, a toilet might be too low. But if it's too low or too squishy, that's going to make it harder. And if you attempt to do this and it's really challenging, you're probably not going to feel good about yourself. You're kind of setting yourself up for failure. So finding a chair or a surface that you are able to do this movement on is an important step in this.
And I think also we spoke, and we'll probably talk a minute about the confidence, building on your confidence, on your own physical ability, and having the right chair is one of the first things to start with, really.
Absolutely, yeah, because again, if you don't have a good chair, your confidence very quickly is going to plummet. It's going to go down. And then you're not going to be motivated to try tomorrow or to try later on in the day because it didn't work before. So yeah, that's really...
I'm going to stop asking you questions again and let you get on with your exercise.
So just to show you, this is the same exercise, just showing you from the front because it's important. You want your legs wide. A lot of people try to stand up with their feet a little bit closer together. But you do want your feet wide and your knees pulled back. If your feet are too far forward, you physically have to like throw your body, like lunge forward just to stand up. So bending your knees and then arms forward, and this is what it looked like from the front. And if you are someone where your knees collapse in, I know that's a lot of people, what I would want you to focus on when you're standing up is physically push your knees out as you're standing up. So it's going to feel funny, but it will help keep them out instead of collapsing in. So that's the first of my two favorite just daily movements, is standing up and sitting down, or just doing this where you're popping your butt up. Or if that's still too hard, just reach forward. It uses your core, your back, so many different muscles.
Okay.
Any questions on that one before I do my second one?
No.
So the next one is for any time you're standing. I'm going to move this up just slightly. So this next one is anytime you are standing and have to bend down for something. So this might be something like reaching down into your refrigerator or freezer, depending on what your setup is. Reaching into your washer or dryer when you're doing laundry. Bending down to pick up laundry. Picking something up off the floor. Anything like that. So, or reaching down to grab something out of a cupboard. I'll show you from the front. So your feet are going to be wide again. And instead, actually I'll show you from the side. Instead of doing this, which is what most people do. So if you notice, my knees didn't really bend, and I'm completely hinging from my hips and reaching down for whatever it is. This works my back, which usually results in back pain. So that's not great. So, but that's what a lot of people do. What I want you to do instead is still hinge like that. Your back is flat. It's not rounded. This is wrong. Back stays flat and bend your knees. So this is like kind of like a squat. From the front, it looks like this. But let me grab something. So I happen to have this toolbox thing over there. So what you're going to do, you get close enough to it, hinge, bend to pick it up, and then put it back down the same way instead of.
Yeah.
It's a slight difference, but it makes a big difference because this is working the muscles that you need to walk better, to get into and out of your car, to climb stairs, to do the things that you want to do throughout the day. Whereas this is really just a stretch for the hamstrings. And you are strengthening your back. However, it's so much tension on your back that, again, it often results in back pain.
Okay.
So those are two movements that we already are doing throughout the day consistently. It's just about doing them a little bit more, and so remembering to do them and doing them with good quality versus what's easiest.
And I can see that. And I can see that the first exercise would be the chair, where you're really, you are exercising your thigh muscles. That's why it's so important to get your thigh muscles, because of all how it then goes on to some, such a common thing of picking something up.
Yeah, right. So these exercises, even though they're sitting or it's that squat movement, you will notice, if you do them consistency, you will notice improvements in your strength when you actually go to do things throughout the day. So the movement part is important, but you will actually notice benefits from it. It's not like it's all for nothing. It actually is strengthening your body.
And are they the two things that we've just gone through? Are they sort of the most popular, or sort of the base foundation for a lot of other things? Which I think I've probably answered it myself, but.
I think so. They are my go-to ones. But once you've started to implement those, and maybe you're thinking, I want to do another one, what should I do? Another really common one is anytime you're standing and waiting for something. So it might be like brushing your teeth, waiting for a cup of coffee, or something like waiting in line. What you can do is stand. So normally we stand with our feet about shoulder distance apart. You can stand a little bit closer to test your balance, or you can stand in a staggered stance. So 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, or vice versa. So you're working your balance at the same time, or maybe even standing on one leg. This leg's up off the ground, and the other leg. So balance is something that you can also incorporate into daily movements if you're doing something where you're standing waiting for something. So that's another one of my go-tos from a different category that's not strengthening.
And I think one thing that sort of I noticed, that stuff that we take when you're having a good day, you just take movement for granted. You don't think of the mechanics of the body, of the the muscle formation, or the way your bones work, or skeleton stuff. And I suppose when you find that you lose you lose some of the natural control and the natural flow, that's when it's it's about relearning, isn't it? Actually learning and taking it down to the basics. So to get from one place to the other, which I think is one of the videos you very kindly did for us, which was walking or marching, you naturally go with the flow. But when you realize that the naturalness has been taken away from you for whatever reason, MS or whatever it is, you then realize you've got to sort of train your mind to think about it literally, I suppose, step by step, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that can be very discouraging, because walking is one of those things where we don't remember. We were so young, we were babies essentially, when we learned to walk. We don't remember that learning process. And so it's just something we've always known how to do. So when that's taken away, it's very defeating and discouraging. However, I would encourage you to change that mindset to be one of which you're relearning. Like, instead of viewing it as, well, now I'm swinging my leg around or my foot is dropping, so that's what's happening now. Take the mindset of, let me relearn how to walk, even though it's something that you used to be able to do. And that's something I can demonstrate as well, because walking is a lot of people have a goal of improving their walking. And typically to improve it, they just walk. They'll walk in their home or walk outside. And that is helpful, but walking requires 7 different movements, 7 different exercises. So when earlier we talked about functional exercise, walking can be broken down into 7 different functional exercises, and it will really make you aware of which movements are weakest for you. Some will be really challenging, others might be really easy, and some will be in the middle. But pick the ones that are hardest, and that's what you should be doing as your exercise.
And I suppose it's like all these things, is that you really should try and do it properly, so that if you find that you may, over the years, it gets harder and harder, as long as you going back, try to do it correctly, you've got more chance of keeping your motion ability. And sort of likewise, it's the usual thing, as we know, if we injure something, our body is very quick to compensate and do it in another way. And then you've got to be careful that you then could be messing with the alignment of your back. And so you could end up giving yourself problems that are nothing to do with MS or whatever condition it might be. It's because you've compensated in another way.
Yeah. And I think you made a very important point, in that one thing that we're doing is relearning how to do, we're using the example of walking, but just know this can be used for anything. So you have to relearn how to walk, but at the same time that you are unlearning the compensation strategies that your
bad habits.
Yes. And that is hard. That's almost harder. So when things are challenging for our body, it gets these compensation strategies to help us. And they are helpful. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do the thing. There are some negative side effects like pain or falls or things that can happen. But to break those bad habits is really hard. And one thing that you'll likely experience, if after this call you say to yourself, okay, anytime I bend down, I'm going to bend down with that squatted form that she showed us. What likely will happen is you will be reaching down low for something in the fridge, and you'll think to yourself, oh shoot, I should have practiced it then, I didn't. Because it's natural for you to do it your old way. And that's totally normal. That usually happens for, I would say, up to about 2 weeks before you start catching yourself before you actually do it wrong, if that makes sense. So at first it's more of the, oh shoot, I forgot to do it. But it's on your mind, you just forgot to do it. But then after about that 2-week mark is when you start doing the right movement right away, because you've been thinking about it more.
Absolutely. So we looked at, those, were they strengths or were they balance exercises you've just demonstrated?
So, but I would say those ones, the sit to stands as well as the squatting, I would say those are kind of a combination of both. Definitely strength, because you need core strength, you need leg strength, even upper body, like arm strength to keep your body weight forward. But when you're standing up, or if you're already standing and bending down, you also need balance. So that one is kind of a combo. For the people who have a goal of improving their balance, I wouldn't necessarily give those two as an exercise. Those are more daily movements. But if your goal is balance, there are specific balance exercises that you can do.
And are they the ones that you want to share with us today, or do you have other exercises in mind that you think would be of more use?
We could do that. I also thought I would demonstrate the 7 different movements of walking. So it's up to, or we could do both, up to you.
I think from what I have understood from our community, and as you have said, that walking is generally one of the first things that people are concerned about and worried. So maybe that's something we should definitely have a look at.
You got it. Let me back up. At any time before I move my chair, I have to turn to see and make sure my dog's not sitting right behind me. Sits behind the wheels. Don't want to roll over him. Okay, so see, I'm going to bend. I'm going to squat to move this out of the way, and then squat to put it back down. So when you're walking, so let's say I'm going to be walking in this direction. I want you guys to focus on what this leg closest to you is doing. So the first thing is we're in this staggered stance, balance, and then we walk forward. So I'm going to really slow it down. Just want to make sure you can see my ankle. Okay, so I'm facing this way, watching this leg. The first thing I need to do is shift my weight forward. If my body weight's back here, I can't lift this leg up without falling backwards. So number 1, shift your weight forward. Number 2, bend your knee. Number 3, swoop your ankle up. Number 4, march. Number 5, leg straightens. Number 6, the heel comes down first. So for those of you who had foot drop, that's going to be challenging. And all of that was happening, I was standing on one leg. So single leg balance, that is the number 7. So I'll show you again, just to make it clear. So earlier I said a lot of people just practice walking, and walking's good, but if one of your biggest limitations is bending your knee, and that's the second step, well, that's what you should be focusing on, and then work on walking later. So shift your weight forward, bend your knee, swoop your toes up, bring your knee up, straighten, heel down, and all while you were doing that, you were standing on one leg. And I also like to point out, even if you use an assistive device, you might be saying to yourself right now, well, I don't need to stand on one leg. I have my walker or my trekking poles. And that is true. You do have that, and you should use it for balance and for safety. But we should never be putting 100% of our body weight, or for that matter, even 75% of our body weight through the assistive device. It is not meant to hold our body weight that much. So the better single leg balance you have, even if you are lightly touching onto something, the better your walking will be. So that's what I mean by pick a goal, in this case walking, and break it down. What are the separate movements that are required for walking? And that's going to be so helpful for people who have a specific goal versus I want to get stronger or I want to improve my balance. Those are also good goals, but there's regular exercises you can do for that. But if you're hoping that will transition into improved mobility or improved function with something, you've got to break it down.
And walking is a good one because it very much is, you do, you know, as you very clearly showed, those actions that had never crossed, but I suppose it doesn't cross your mind until you find that there's a problem and you're aware of moving your body correctly. And as walking is a good one to show that, to get your brain to start thinking, right, I want to do something. Let me break it down into easy steps. And then you can start really working on that as a proper exercise.
Yes, and I even have some of so when I was working in a physio clinic, I would get a lot of clients who had MS, and they would come to me and they would say, I'm only here because my neurologist told me to come. I'm doing okay. I don't really have anything I want to work on, but it's always good to get at least one evaluation just to get your numbers tracked, your strength, your balance tests, all of that. And even for those people, I still demonstrated the walking movements. And for some of them, they're walking fine, but when they're practicing those movements, they realize, whoa, I didn't realize it was challenging to bend my knee. I should probably do that exercise. So they might have some tiny little bit of underlying weakness that isn't affecting their walking yet, at least. But if you can get on top of it and do those exercises earlier, hopefully it won't affect your walking because you're getting ahead of it.
I think that's what I was just saying. The more you can do it 100%, or as 100% as you can get to correctly now, when challenges start to come, you've got a good basis to try to go back on.
Exactly.
And it's training your mind. So one of the things we spoke about were the common reasons for weakness. And have we covered those or not really?
So it depends on a few things. So reasons for weakness, and I think this is an important thing that we haven't directly gone over. I have this presentation that I give often, and I'm a big fan of this specific slide. So what this slide has on it is it says what needs to happen for a muscle to work. And there's 3 different images. And so the first image is of the brain. So the first thing that needs to happen is your brain needs to say, lift your leg. Or your brain needs to have the thought of doing the movement, or it's reflexive. But either way, your brain is active in that. So once your brain says, okay, do this, then there's a picture of a nerve. Because once the brain says that, that message travels on a bunch of different neural pathways. And then the last picture is of the Hulk. And so it's this big, strong guy, meaning the muscles is the last part. The muscles have to actually fire. But if the brain doesn't have the thought or the reflex to move, the nerve's not going to work and the muscles aren't going to work. Mm-hmm. Or if the brain fires and says move, but there's demyelination, the nerve might not work. So then the muscle doesn't work. So any one of those 3 things can be a reason for weakness. It could usually it's not the brain, but it could be like if you're hyporeflexive, where your reflexes are just diminished. But usually it's that nerve part, especially if it's multiple sclerosis, it usually is that nerve like 99% of the time. So there are actually exercises that you can do, and a lot of them are the same ones that we've been talking about. It's just how you do them to strengthen the neural pathways that do exist, or to find a new neural pathway, which if you guys may have heard the term of neuroplasticity, that's what neuroplasticity is. So practicing a movement over and over and over again, even if there's little or no movement occurring, that's okay. Every time you're practicing, your brain is trying to find a new way to make that muscle fire. So one of the most common reasons when it comes to MS specifically is that neural pathway, that nerve connection. Once that's stronger, that's when the muscles can be stronger. But for other people, if it's a chronic condition that's not related to nerves, it could just be the muscle piece. It could just be that the muscles are atrophied, and that in order to get them stronger and to work them for endurance, so those muscles work over a longer period of time, then it's more of just the basic strengthening exercises.
And it is amazing. Your brain is so clever how it can start to relearn a different way to get the same result.
Yep. And if you think about it, what it requires is repetition. As I just mentioned, every single time you attempt a movement, whether it's successful or not, every single time you attempt it, that's an attempt of your brain trying to find the pathway. And if you think about it, it's the same process that happens. Neuroplasticity happens in babies as they're learning these new things every step of the way. And so I recently became an aunt in October. So my nephew is now 4 months old, and he's learned to sit unassisted literally in like just a couple of days, because he's at that age now where he was trying to do it on his own. So my sister's supporting him less. And I think it's been less than a week and he's already doing a decent job. And it's because he's practicing it all the time. Like all day long, he's trying to sit up without assistance. So we have to adopt that mindset and say, okay, I'm doing this all day long. You don't literally have to do it all day long, but the more you do it, the more repetitions, the more opportunities you're giving your brain to find a pathway so that it can actually work.
And it's no different, I think, to professional sports people. If you look, they train, they do the same thing all the time. And obviously a lot of it, one is looking for muscle memory or brain memory or whatever it is. But also they have a coach all the time saying, no, that you're not doing that quite right. You need to change it. And I think there's nothing wrong with us getting and seeking help from people like yourself, saying, no, you can do it in a better way. And I think that's why it's important to try to get the right coaching.
It really is. Yeah, and I speak a lot on how I call it regular physiotherapy is so different, so different from MS specific physiotherapy. And the reason I'm so confident in saying that is because I didn't used to be an MS specific physio. It was just regular. And what I mean by regular is orthopedic. So that's the type where you'd go to physio if you have back pain or neck pain, or you had shoulder injury, knee surgery, those types of things. And those exercises are more of the regular exercise type. Whereas the MS specific physio, they're almost all functional exercises. And I've had so many people come to me saying, I don't think this is going to work for me. I've been to PT before and it didn't work. So this isn't going to work either. And so it's very important that you seek out the right type of assistance and guidance and exercises for you.
Absolutely. So I think it's now time, just very quickly, because it's time to move on to questions. But one of the things that I wanted us to talk again about was sort of the positive mindset of things. And you had a couple of, when we spoke before, about a couple of ways to try and keep people on I wouldn't say the straight and the narrow, but we do know that adherence or keeping to the same routine is the thing that reaps the rewards.
Yes. Yeah. And that's one thing. This is something I'm getting into more recently, talking about publicly, because it's something that I've been doing for years, where you think I refer to it as affirmations. There's a bunch of different names. You can call it whatever you want. But having go-to sentences that you tell yourself that make you feel inspired or like you're on track, like you are in control, and saying them to yourself multiple times a day. But especially after you do something that's good for yourself, exercise, eating a good meal, positively reinforce that same thing with repetition of the exercises. You have to repeat a positive mindset. And if you don't have that, then you won't stay consistent over time. And there are other strategies you can do as well. You can get an accountability partner. You can get, I have a pen and paper here, you can get a tracker. Write down what you're doing so that you can physically see on paper a bunch of stars if you completed your exercises that day. So there are other strategies other than purely mindset ones, but find what works for you. One thing that we were talking about yesterday is everyone's motivated by something different. Some people might be motivated by seeing a bunch of stars on their page, whereas other people, they look at that and it doesn't do anything for them. But if they give themselves a reward, like if at the end of a week, if you exercised the days that you said you're going to reward yourself with X, Y, and Z, a book, a Starbucks coffee, whatever it is.
I was thinking of a piece of cake, which is really sad.
I probably would go for the cake too. So like reward is another one. So there, recognition is another one too. So if you are someone who likes to be recognized, if you're part of a group that like maybe shouts people out for doing a good job, then that's something that you might shoot for. But having a positive mindset and a positive environment and community is a must. If you're trying to do it on your own and you're just thinking, yeah, I did it, but could have been better. I mean, realistically, you're not going to stay consistent long enough to see results.
Yeah. And we're trying to get results in the sense that we're trying to get people to feel good and more mobility perhaps than they already have.
Yeah, and one cool thing that happens a lot with working in this way is that it's tedious, it's hard, you got to be consistent, but if you're consistent, eventually you will start to notice improved strength and improved mobility, and what that results in mentally is more confidence and more participation in life. Maybe you say yes to more opportunities because you're confident that you can go out and do them. Your fatigue starts to improve. So if you can stick through the tediousness of staying consistent with the exercises, mentally you will feel better and more confident. And for me, that's the ultimate goal. I try to help people feel more confident, participate more. And we start with the exercises because that's where it all stems from. But over time, that's what you're working towards.
Okay, so we'll quickly go on to some of the questions. One of the questions that we actually did have sent in previously was, how often would you recommend exercising? But I suppose, how long is a piece of string?
Right. So that's a good question. I will say I like to answer as often as I can with what research is saying versus just what I think, but I can give you a little bit of both. So research is stating that it doesn't matter, it's equally as effective if you exercise all at once or throughout the day. So what that means is if you exercise for an hour all at once, that is just as effective as if you exercise for 5 minutes here and there a bunch of times throughout the day, or 10 minutes here and there. So in terms of how long, it truly doesn't matter. What matters is just that you're doing them. Yeah. But I will say what does matter, as we've said, this is probably at least the third time, is the repetition. So what I tell people is shoot for the number 30 of a specific exercise. Try to do it 30 times with perfect, or as close to perfect as you can, quality. And that might look like your first set is 10, and then you stop because you're getting a little tired. And then you do a second set, and maybe your second set is only 7, because at that 7th one is when you started noticing worse quality or fatigue. So take a break. And then your 3rd set and your 4th set might be 4 repetitions. That's good. Then your 5th set might be 3. Your 6th set might be 2. So you just keep going. It doesn't matter how many reps or sets it takes. Just get to 30 good ones. And if you find that 30 was too easy, shoot for more. If 30 was too hard, stop when you need to. So it's more about the good quality of the movement than it is about 10 times 3 sets for 30 minutes and X, Y, and Z. It's when you have MS and other chronic conditions, it's more about the quality than anything else.
Well, funny enough, our friend Claire put together what tips do you have to stay consistent? And I exercise most days. Is every day too much? Well, I think you've answered that. Exercise, yes, as often as you like and you can. And staying consistent, I suppose it's finding out what recognition and rewards are good for you in many ways.
Yeah, and my tip for that would be, we've mentioned a few already on this call, but my tip would be for 1 week or 2 weeks or maybe even a month, but I would probably say maybe around the 2-week mark, try one strategy. So let's just say you're motivation is rewards. That's what you want to go for first. Give yourself a reward, and a reward that you truly want. Like I had mentioned earlier, Starbucks coffee, but if you normally get Starbucks coffee, that's not going to be a reward enough to make you stay consistent. So maybe it is a piece of cake, or a date with a friend, or something exciting that you're looking forward to. And so for 2 weeks, do your exercises knowing that at the end of each week, if you stayed consistent, you can get that reward. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, ask yourself, did it work? And if it didn't work, if you weren't consistent, either the reward wasn't motivating enough, so choose the bigger reward, or maybe rewards aren't motivating as motivating as you thought they would be, but accountability will. And so get an accountability partner for 2 weeks. Do you stay more consistent when you know you have to tell that person or log it publicly that you're doing your exercise? That's what I do. Anytime I exercise, I use social media and I share it. I share a clip of my workout because I know, okay, I'm showing it to other people. That holds me accountable. So, so what I would suggest is a couple of different options. Pick one that you think might work for you and try it for at least 2 weeks. If it worked, good, stick with it. If it didn't, try something else.
And also the ultimate reward really is that you hopefully gain strength, you gain better balance, or whatever it is you're aiming for, but it's getting along that pathway. So another one, somebody says, great input, thank you. My legs feel stiff and sore when squatting or getting off the sofa all the time, despite doing some targeted exercise. Am I just not doing enough exercise? Is it age related? I'm mid-40s. How can I improve discomfort? I feel so old. Lots of us can say that. I don't know what it is, whether it's a certain age that one gets to, and you suddenly notice, regardless of your condition, whether you have an underlying condition or not, when you get up or sit down from a chair, there's always a noise that comes out, and you think, oh my God, I didn't used to make that noise.
Yes. So one thing that I actually suggest to a lot of my clients, and this is for MS or not, when a lot of people, I will say you are in good company with this issue. And what I tell a lot of people is that most of the time, not always, but most of the time that you're feeling that stiffness and soreness and discomfort when you go to stand up after sitting for a bit is because your muscles, your bones, your nerves, everything in a way fall asleep if you're sitting for too much. So then we go to stand up and all of a sudden they need to work and they're not ready yet. So it's kind of like your muscles and nerves are sleepwalking, if you will. And that's uncomfortable and achy. And so regardless, what I typically suggest is before you get up, so if you know, like, okay, got to get up and go to the bathroom, I'm going to get up to go grab a cup of water from the kitchen. Before you get up, move your legs around, not as exercise, not as good quality, as many reps as you can, not that, but just kick your legs forward, straighten your knees, then bend your knees. Just a couple of times. March your legs a couple of times. Lift your ankles up and down a couple of times, and then get up. And what that does is that it's essentially waking up the nerves, waking up the muscles so that they are ready to work when you stand up. And that strategy has been really effective for a lot of people.
That's good. Because I'm really naughty, I sit on my legs, and I've just moved my legs now, and I can feel it hurts. So if I were to get up, I couldn't suddenly run. I'd be like, all like this. And I'm just thinking, oh yeah, now I've moved my legs a bit, I can immediately feel it will be much better when I get up.
Yeah. And one last thing too that I want to make sure I mention, and this goes along the lines with how to stay consistent and motivated. One thing that I suggest a lot of people, if not everyone, do is create your why. And the way that you do this, it's not just as simple as, okay, well, why do I want to exercise? Because I want to get stronger. That's valid. That's a valid thought. But I challenge you to really dig deep and keep asking yourself why for every layer. So one example that I have is, let's say this theoretical person says, initially I ask them, well, why do you want to exercise? Why do you want to stay consistent? And their answer might be, because I want to be stronger. Okay, well, why do you want to be stronger? Well, I want to be stronger because that means I can walk more. Well, why do you want to walk more? Because if I can walk more, I can go for walks with my family. Well, why do you want to go for walks with your family? Well, I want to go for walks with my family because then I won't be left behind. Well, why do you not want to be left behind? So, and then it turns into, instead of, I want to exercise because I want to be stronger, it turns into, I want to exercise so I'm not left behind. And that is so much more emotion than I want to get stronger. So just keep asking yourself, why? And you might feel like, okay, that's as far as I can go. I don't have any other answers. Come back a few days later and see if you have another answer and get to the root of why this even means anything to you. And it's going to be different for everyone. But then on those extra hard days, and you just like really don't want to do it, or maybe you fell off track and you're having a hard time getting back on track, why do you want to do it? And look at your series of questions and really get back to that, what pulls on your heartstrings. If it doesn't pull on your heartstrings, you didn't ask yourself why enough times. So just keep going until you have that meaning.
Yeah, no, I think that's really great advice for so many things, to be honest.
Yeah.
Definitely. So what we would, as you know, we have a My MS, which is I was going to say it's like light-hearted isn't the right word, but it's a very easy, accessible way. Over every week we send out information to people, and it's quite a bit, it's obvious stuff, but for some people it's stuff that they might have forgotten. And so what we'd like to do, if it's all right with you, Gretchen, is put both your series of exercises that we have and this webinar into that program so that people can pick it up. Because I think it's great seeing things written, but also it's nice to see little videos as well, and people talking and, having a mixture. So we will be, and please do recommend people to the program, because we've had some really great feedback, and it is very much underpinning, supporting people like Gretchen and all the MS charities that are out there that helped us promote to write the program. It is about signposting people to external or extra sources that you may already know or want to get familiar with again. So please do have a little look at that. And that leaves me just to say thank you so much, Gretchen. It's been really enjoyable, and I know that, well, now I feel that we can get lots of people to do some exercises and physical demonstrations during our webinars. It's really helpful, really great.
I'm glad. I personally am a very visual learner, so it really hits home for me if I can see something being done. So that's why I do like to include that visual component of demonstration, just because I think it brings it home. It makes it feel more realistic and more doable and more clear. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, brilliant. Great. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody that posted some questions and for staying with us. Bye.
Bye.